I imagine that talking about the fact that Klal Yisrael is a chosen people is not news for anybody, but it's an idea that needs continuous review, revision, understanding, and I think that it very immediately connects with Chanukah. First, we need to recognize that the process of choosing is a running theme in Klal Yisrael and in our nusach, in our davening. So we have the psukim that the Haggadah is based on, that Yehoshua told the people, let me review your history with you. There was Terach, he was the father of Avram and Nahor, and I chose Avram. And Avram had two children, Yitzchak and Yishmael, and I chose Yitzchak. And Yitzchak had two children, Yaakov and Esav, and I chose Yaakov. And the price tag for that chosenness was that they were prepared to go down to Mitzrayim. That's why Yaakov is the chosen. He was prepared to pay the price tag. Yaakov was undertook the invoice that was passed down from Avraham, that there would have to be the suffering of Mitzrayim, and when he accepted that, he became the object of that choosing process that started with Avraham. And we make a big fuss about this throughout our davening. I just quickly wrote down a couple of examples. We say every morning and every time there's an aliyah, Asher bochar banu mikol ha'amim, v'nosan lanu es haTorah, Asher bochar banu mikol am, v'romamanu mikol lashon, that we say in Kiddush on Shabbos. Before we recite Kriya Shema, we announce that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the Bocher Ba'amo Yisrael Bi'ava. And Yontif, we again, Atov v'chartonu mikol ha'amim. It's the Nusach HaTfilah continually makes reference to this feature of Klal Yisrael, that they are the Am HaNivchar. They are chosen, which means essentially that the representation of HaKadosh Baruch Hu in the world is going to come through Klal Yisrael. And it's easy to wonder how it is that choice is so permanent. And in fact, the Ramchal makes reference to this, where he essentially calls out the foundation of Christianity, which is that the Jewish people, they acknowledge that the Jewish people are the chosen people. However, since Hashem gave free choice, therefore, the role of Klal Yisrael being chosen has now been shifted away from Hashem, and it's now left to people. So therefore, if people act in the wrong way, specifically if Klal Yisrael acts the wrong way, they lose their status as the Am HaNivchar, and that's how Christianity tried to assert that Klal Yisrael was the Am HaNivchar, but that status was lost. And the Das Tvunos, the Ramchal makes it a point of putting this as one of the Yesodei Ho'emunah, that's not the case. That's the choice and the relationship with Klal Yisrael is wired into the Yichud Hashem. It's not a choice which is subject to the possibility of it being undone. And that assertion that this is a permanent fixture of Yichud Hashem, that there's an Am HaNivchar, which HaKadosh Baruch Hu has chosen and given us the Torah, that is a source of confidence, but it's also a source of terrifying awareness. And that is that if Klal Yisrael will ever try to lose its unique identity, if it will try to look like, feel like, be like the Umos HaOlam, there is a guarantee written into creation. There's a guarantee, Bishvil Yisrael Shanikru Reishis. There's a guarantee that's written into creation that that process will be stopped. The same way that HaKadosh Baruch Hu guarantees that he's going to redeem us, that he will in the end be Mevi Goel Livnei V'neihem, that no matter what, even if our choices are not in line, that he will redeem us, requires that he have a system in place that pushes us back into our lane. And this is crucial that we keep in mind that the Maharal tells us that he explains a rather surprising Gemara. The Gemara says, Gemara Menachos says, Mitzur ad Kartigni makirin es Yisrael v'yesaviyim shabashamayim. Okay, from these 2 points, Tzur and Kartigni, they recognize Klal Yisrael and they recognize the Creator. Umitzur klape Marav, umikartigni klape Mizrach, ein makirin es Yisrael v'lo es aviyim shabashamayim. When it goes beyond these points, they don't recognize Klal Yisrael and their Father in Shamayim. So the Maharal explains that, and it's a yesod that he says often, that there's only one place for Klal Yisrael. And the place for Klal Yisrael is at the center. Physically, that's Eretz Yisrael. The place for Klal Yisrael is at the center. And spiritually, the place for Klal Yisrael is centered around Avodas Hashem. And if you're not a normal Jew, okay, a normal Jew means someone who is at the center, focused on his relationship with the Kodesh Baruch Hu, and yearning for, if not physically present in, the center where Klal Yisrael belongs. If you go further, if you start becoming an abnormal Jew, well, what's an abnormal Jew? An abnormal Jew starts to look like a non-Jew. An abnormal Jew is someone who has drifted off into extremes, either into ascetic extremes on the one side, and the Mizrach, going off into the Far East and looking like somebody who has disconnected from the center, or the West, going to the West, where he starts to look like the common man, look like, think like, feel like Kechol HaGoyim Yisrael. So if he drifts off to the right, to the east, or he drifts off to the left, he stops being recognizable. And when he stops being recognizable, there's a major risk involved, because you no longer associate him with the tree trunk of Klal Yisrael, because that's not the place where Klal Yisrael belongs. Klal Yisrael belongs focused and centered on Avodas Hashem. And in response, the Navi tells us, the Navi in Yechezkel says, "V'ha'oleh al ruchachem," what you think, hayolo siyeh, it ain't gonna happen. Asher atem omrim nihiyeh kagoyim, kimishbechos o arotzos, l'shoretz eitz va'even. If you think that you're going to drift off and be like the other nations, whether it's the Far Eastern nations, which was for a time very popular in Jewish circles. I don't know if it's so popular anymore. Jews are running off to India and joining all sorts of extreme ascetic groups, losing their characteristic as Jews, and in the West, where they were worshiping Eitz V'Even, people feeling confident because of their structures, because of their money, because of their popularity. So if you think that that's going to work, says the Navi, you should know, Chai ani ne'um Hashem Elokim, im lo biyad chazaka uvizroa netuya uvechema shefucha emloch aleichem. You must know that in the end, I will be your king, no matter what it takes, no matter how intense the correction needs to be. In the end, I will be your king, because this is not something that is subject to maybe yes, maybe no. This is not something that is subject to your whim. It's not subject to something that's even subject to your bechira, in the sense of that you could choose to opt out of being the chosen people. I will be your king. I will gather you, and I will once again be your king. So this idea that when we drift off, there is a guaranteed correction. It's not something that could happen or couldn't not happen. It's a guaranteed correction that when we stop looking like, thinking like, feeling like the center, which is our avodas Hashem, the Torah obviously being at the core, at the center, with all of that which is mista'ef, with everything that is surrounds it. So, and that won't work. In the end, the Kadosh Baruch Hu will be melech on us. And that, while that sounds very harsh, it also has a very gentle side, a much more tzad harachamim. And the tzad harachamim is that there will be, therefore, there will be miracles. There will be invitations. There will be reminders. There will be notices. Shelo kederech hateva. Literally, unnatural notices and reminders. So it won't only be ba'af uvechema, that with poured out wrath, I will be your king. I will be sovereign over you, because it is part of the Yesodei ha'emunah. It is part of who it is that is HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But there'll be another side of the story, and that is that there will be reminders. And the reminders will be gentle. The reminders will be loving. And the reminders are meant to accomplish exactly the same thing, to draw us back from where we might have drifted away from being at the core, at the center, at the middle, where we're meant to be, and to invite us back. And I believe that that is the essence that we're supposed to experience when we're looking at these little Hanukkah candles. We're looking at that little candle, and we're saying, "She'osa nisim la'avoseinu b'yomim ha'hem b'zman hazeh." What was the point of the nisim? The nisim were these calling cards. The nisim were these reminders. The nisim were these invitations. It doesn't have to be ba'af uvechema if we choose it voluntarily, if we choose to recenter ourselves. if we choose to recognize where we belong in the middle, because the Kodesh Baruch Hu provides us with a reminder that is so loving and is 500 times more loving than all of the af and the chema that may be necessary to be melech on us. And so, if we're looking at these little candles, we can draw from them a certain surge of the loving reminder that in the end, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to be melech over us. It's not optional. It's not. It's subject to our discretion. Just how will we come back and realign ourselves? Well, the people at the center always have to be more at the center. That's how the people who are at the periphery become more centered. That is the ner going. That's how it works. As we become more and increasingly centered, then we are drawing in a vortex. We are drawing others who are at the periphery, whether to the east or to the west. We are drawing them closer to the center. And we're doing so with the most loving possible embrace of the nace of Ner Chanukah. And the hope and the prayer is that it'll be Sha'asa Nisim Lavosenu Bayomi Mahem in those days when we were very much slipping off to the east and to the west. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu, through the intervention of those who were centered, of those who, these 13 Avrechim, who were very centered, HaKadosh Baruch Hu made a miracle that would remind us for all times that we are being invited and called back to the Emtza, that in that day, in that same vein, Bayomi Mahain, Uvazman Hazeh.